This is East Asia Tonight.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jill Newbronner, and here are tonight's top stories from East Asia. Moving closer to a diplomatic reset, India's Foreign Secretary in China for talks where Beijing's top diplomat says he wants understanding, not suspicion. Factory activity in China slows unexpectedly, defying broad-based stimulus measures aimed at achieving steady momentum in Asia's top economy. Impeached South Korean President Yoon's lawyers described the leader's indictment for the insurrection as the worst decision. He is the country's first president to be indicted while in office. An early draft of the accident report from last month's deadly Jeju Air crash. Investigators found duck remains in both engines of the plane. Ahead on East Asia Tonight, the world's largest annual human migration is well underway across China, with millions rushing home to mark the Chinese New Year.
The Spring Festival is China's most important festival and also its busiest travel period. Aside from the mass exodus of people from the cities traveling back to their hometowns, there's also mass movement of holidaymakers hoping to make good use of the 8-day public holiday.
China is calling on India to commit to mutual understanding and work in the same direction rather than mutual suspicion or alienation. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi said this in a meeting with Indian Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri. The Indian diplomat is in Beijing, wrapping up a 2-day visit. China's foreign ministry said Mr. Wang urged the two countries to meet each other halfway. Analysts say relations are on the mend after a series of high-level meetings, including one between President Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Narendra Modi in October. Mr. Misri said Beijing and Delhi have properly managed their differences since then and are restarting practical cooperation. Now, ties between China and India were strained after a deadly border clash in 2020. Last month, Mr. Wang met Indian National Security Advisor Ajit Doval in Beijing, restarting the special representatives meeting after a 5-year hiatus. Both sides reaching a 6-point consensus on the border issue and agreed to continue taking measures to safeguard peace in the border areas. Well, let's get more now. We're joined by Daniel Bolash, Research Fellow at the RSIS China Program. Dr. Bolash, welcome to you. Now, we heard Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi calling for mutual commitment rather than mutual alienation or suspicion. Now, would you read that statement as an olive branch or a veiled warning?
I think that in the past couple of months, Chinese and India leaders, they have been working really hard to build up a positive momentum for the improvement of China-India relations. And the Indian Foreign Secretary's visit to China is part of harnessing this positive momentum. And so what they are trying to sort out here later at the potential third meeting that is going to happen between the Foreign Secretary and his Chinese counterpart, the Chinese Vice Foreign Minister Sun Weitong, is to resume direct flights between China and India, issue visas to facilitate business and media exchanges, and improve trade relations.
Well, as you mentioned, there are many things on the table for them to discuss. You mentioned that top of the agenda, resumption of direct flights, visas for businessmen as well as journalists, and also trade issues. Now, how difficult do you think these outstanding issues are to resolve?
They are going to require long-term, mutually beneficial exchanges. Because what we have to see is that China-India relations have been rather strained between 2020 and 2024, but there has been momentum between the two sides with the border patrol agreement reached in October 2024. But they have started a journey of restoring their bilateral relations, but that journey they will still have to build on the positive momentum that is going on.
Yeah, it's all about building on that momentum. And as you pointed out, it all boils down to that border issue, doesn't it? Now, the visit by India's Foreign Secretary follows an agreement in October to disengage troops at two key face-off points along that border area. In your opinion, are we likely to see further progress on this very important, very fragile issue?
So, as you have pointed out correctly, there was a disengagement between the troops in the final two friction points. That was a leftover issue after the 2020 confrontations. And the disengagement has been confirmed, and the two parties have also started to conduct joint patrols, coordinated patrols, on a weekly basis. So what I would expect to see there is to have further confidence-building measures to be implemented in 2025, and after that, building on that positive momentum, there could be a stabilization of the border, further stabilization of the border dispute.
As I mentioned, it is still quite a fragile issue because I say that as another point of contention is China's mega dam project, the one in the Tibetan Plateau. I'm wondering, this has raised concerns among Indian environmentalists, but will it undermine the thaw and the momentum, as you said, that's going on right now in bilateral relations?
The dam has indeed sparked some Indian concern because India is concerned that upstream constructions could harm the interest of downstream states. India has also articulated a very clear request for consultations and transparent communications from China in the process of implementing the project. As far as the border issue remains stable and the two sides resort to diplomatic channels to convey concerns and conduct consultations, then I think the relationship could stabilize further and the mega dam could possibly be a win-win for both.
So there is a potential there. And at the same time, the foreign ministers of the Quad Alliance, and that includes India, have met recently in Washington after U.S. President Donald Trump's return to the White House. Now, observers are saying that this sent a very strong signal to China. Do you agree? How do you think this may impact and feed into China-India ties?
What we can expect from China-India relations, as long as the border issue remains stable, I foresee a gradual improvement of China-India relations, and which means that China-India relations between 2020 and 2024 are going to be very different from China-India relations from 2025 going forward, and the U.S. will have to adopt its Asia policy to this new normal of gradually improving China-India relations.
All right, we'll leave it there for now, but I do thank you, Daniel Bolange, Research Fellow at the RSIS China Program. Thank you very much. Lawyers for impeached South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol have lashed out at his indictment for insurrection, calling it the worst decision. They accused prosecutors of currying favor with political forces seeking Mr. Yoon's ouster. Now, his defense team said the indictment will remain a shame in the history of South Korean prosecutors that they cannot erase, stressing that the president's declaration of martial law cannot ever be a rebellion. Prosecutors indicted Mr. Yoon on charges of leading an insurrection with his short-lived martial law decree last month, accusing him of being a ringleader. This makes him the first sitting president in the country's history to be charged while under detention. South Korea's opposition welcomed the indictment, with Democratic Party spokesperson Han Min-soo, saying it was the start of punishment of, quote, the ringleader of insurrection. Well, Mr. Yoon's detention was due to end today. Prosecutors had sought to extend it twice, but a Seoul court rejected it. By law, a suspect must be released if not indicted within a detention period. So his indictment with detention now means Mr. Yoon will stay behind bars until his case goes to trial. Insurrection is one of the few charges a South Korean president does not have immunity from. The country's criminal law defines insurrection as an attempt to overthrow the government organs established by the Constitution, or to render the exercise of their functions impossible by force. The offence is punishable by life imprisonment or death. CNA's Gracian talked us through what to expect in Mr. Yoon's cases in the coming days, especially if his indictment is submitted to the Constitutional Court for use in the impeachment trial.
Now, if that happens, the impeachment trial could proceed more quickly. And the way President Yoon abides to the prosecutor's investigation could also impact the impeachment trial. Though Yoon had made clear that he wouldn't avoid any legal or political responsibility, he has refused to cooperate with CIO's investigation and has continuously opposed the execution of arrest warrants, claiming them to be illegal. So during the impeachment trial of former President Park Geun-hye, the Constitutional Court at the time cited her refusal to comply with investigation requests as one of the grounds to removing her from office. So President Yoon's criminal trial is expected to start as early as mid-February. Meantime, his impeachment trial has already progressed to the fourth hearing, and the eighth hearing is scheduled for February 13th. So if no additional hearings are scheduled, the impeachment trial could conclude even before the criminal trial.
Well, earlier we spoke to Baek Tae-ung, a professor of law at the William S. Richardson School of Law, University of Hawaii at Manoa. Now, he shared his insights on the strategies President Yoon's legal team could employ in defense of the impeached president.
I think they focus on is buying time and hoping for changes in political climate in Korea. The current ruling party had been very, very low support. Had been in a bad position, but last 50 some days, we have seen some growing development of Yoon Suk-yeol's supporter, who are mostly related to the far right movement on street, and they also are looking forward to some changes by the court proceeding against the current ruling opposition party leader Lee Jae-myung. And all those situations might influence the impeachment proceeding that is going on in Constitutional Court. And if the Constitutional Court decides that the impeachment bill is not correct, then some serious political change may happen. So their major defense strategy, I think, is to buy time and also focus on impeachment proceeding in Constitutional Court and raising all possible issues or procedures, such as requesting parole and also challenging all evidentiary standard, etc.
Coming up on East Asia tonight, Chinese industrial profits turning in a third year in the red, underlining the urgency for more support in an economy facing the prospects of more tariffs under the U.S.'s new administration. Plus, Chinese AI companies threatening America's lead in the cutting-edge technology. Welcome back, everyone. Roland Lim joins us for the business update. And Roland, what's the data telling us about Asia's number one economy today?
Well, it says that China's growth still struggling to gain momentum. This as China's factory activity showed signs of a slowdown. Chinese President Xi Jinping says that Beijing will prevent and resolve external shocks and risks in key areas. Now, that's against a backdrop of rising tariffs and falling manufacturing growth in the country. Official figures out earlier today showed that China's factory activity shrank in January, breaking a 3-month streak of growth as Beijing continues to wage an uphill battle to sustain the recovery in the world's second biggest economy. Manufacturing Purchasing Managers Index for this month came in at 49.1, moving to a contraction from a slight gain in December. A non-manufacturing PMI for January fell to 50.2 from 52.5, suggesting weakening domestic demand. Remember, the 50-point marks separates expansion from contraction in activity. The country's Statistics Bureau attributed the slide partly to the 8-day Lunar New Year holiday, with many employees returning to their hometowns. Industrial profits marked its third year in the red, with tariff threats looming under the new Trump administration. Profits at China's industrial firms fell 3.3% last year. Last month, profits jumped 11% on year, reversing a decline from the previous month. The latest data highlights the need for more support measures in the face of Trump's tariff threats. Now, China still faces a depressed property market, and its domestic demand still lackluster as well. Still, its official growth last year managed to meet target thanks to extensive government stimulus. Staying in Beijing, China is ramping up efforts to support its equity markets amid fears of a prolonged economic slowdown and the threat of higher U.S. tariffs. Authorities announced new measures over the weekend to promote the development of index investment products. The regulator has pledged to strengthen the asset allocation function of index funds and provide more convenient channels for medium and long-term funds to enter the market. It'll also try to attract foreign funds to invest in the yuan-denominated A-share market and actively promote the development of equity and bond exchange-traded funds. The stock market watchdog has also pledged to reduce the cost of index funds and exempt market-making fees. Chinese shares have been under pressure in recent months amid broader economic fears. Traders have also been disappointed by Beijing's string of stimulus efforts that haven't proven to go far enough to address the drags on economic growth. Just last week, authorities told state-owned insurance companies to invest more in stocks, and that was met with a lackluster market reaction. Chinese markets are in the red on the last day before the Chinese New Year holiday. Bucking the trend, though, the Hang Seng Index is up 0.66%. Investors betting on big fund inflows after China stepped up efforts to shore up the capital market. Mainland indices, Shenzhen did the worst, down 1.3% for the day. To help unpack the latest data and support for the markets, we're joined by Raymond Yoon. He is Chief Economist, Greater China at ANZ Bank. Raymond, good to have you with us on the show as always. Let's start with the good news first. There was much excitement in the markets that signs that institutional money now starting to flow back into the Chinese stock market. Now, Beijing has set specific targets last week to get insurers, mutual funds to invest. Over the weekend, more measures to promote the development of investment products as well. What do you estimate to be the cumulative impact of all these stimulus measures for Chinese equities?
The authorities have already started the whole stimulus package back in the end of September last year, and this is an extension of a series of measures trying to improve the sentiment of the Chinese onshore market. Now, apparently, what's dragged the Chinese economy is more about consumption's been affected hugely by the decline in property price. The negative wealth effect has already been seen in the consumption sector. So what the Chinese governments want to do is to improve the asset pricing, and the stock market is the easiest for them to do. And bear in mind that the stock market's performance in the last 2 decades has not been consistent with the economic fundamental. So I believe that this is also a way not just trying to improve the sentiment in the short term, but also to improve the overall ecosystem of the Chinese equities market and the capital market broadly. And that is exactly what the CSRC pointed out last Friday.
Is ANZ itself re-rating or upgrading its valuations for Chinese equities?
we don't do, unfortunately, we don't do equity business. So I don't have any, forecast for the equities market. But from a macro point of view, what we do agree is that the Chinese financial sector has been heavily bank biased. Most of the company, they raise funds through banks, borrowing, and or maybe shadow banking as well. So what the government has been trying to do in the last decade is to promote the use of capital market as a way for fundraising, and by only improving, the overall governance of the companies, and also to improve the investment environment of the stock market, so that the household are willing to put their money in the stock market. Also, the way all these measures has been launched in the last few days is to encourage the long-term funding, be it a life insurance company, pension funds, and institutional investors in increasing their equities exposure, so that the Chinese stock market will not be simply retail investor dominated, but more institutional investors share in involvement in the stock market. I think this is the overall direction of the reforms, and all the measures has been announced in the last few days.
Raymond, today's factory data underscores that China's economy is certainly not out of the woods yet. The slowdown seems to be more pronounced in construction as compared to the services sector. Were they as expected? Are there any reasons to be optimistic?
Now, obviously, the January data has been affected by the holiday, and bear in mind that this year that a lot of people have already been on holiday, because people went to work on Sunday. You don't believe it, for us outside onshore, then we know that many of them are already taking leave so that they can enjoy the full week of holiday, even extended to next week too. So it's a shorter work month, or much fewer working days compared with previous months. But also there are also some other factors that are affecting the readings of the January PMI. For the manufacturing PMI, there might also be some front-loading shipment happened in December. And that's why the manufacturing PMIs has dropped a lot, especially the output sub-index also dropped by 2 points, and the overall index dropped by 1 point. For the services sector, it's dropped by 2 points, edging closer to the contractionary zone. Is still expansionary, but nearly at the threshold of 50. I believe that might also have something to do with the holiday. We know that in the last 2 or 3 years that lots of people rather concentrate their consumption during the holiday. So the domestic tourism will be very good. But away from holidays, some other times in the normal working times, that the service sector has been underperforming. So I think that the January readings has been affected by this holiday effect a lot. So we cannot gauge the overall economic performance at the moment based on this set of PMI in January.
Speaking of the holidays, the Golden Week effect, are you expecting consumers to spend more locally? I mean, some market watchers are already saying that there is a gap between the satisfactory GDP numbers and sentiment on the ground. Do you see that the current policies aren't enough to make up for the demand-supply imbalance that we're seeing in the system?
I think fundamentally we cannot conclude that the economy has already been recovering, and the improvement in the last few months can only be a sign of stabilization. It has been, because of this stimulus measure, we could say that the policy effect is to stop loss rather than able to boost consumption or to boost economic recovery significantly. I think that we do expect that the holiday or the upcoming 2 weeks, we'll see a lot of headlines about how strong the domestic tourism is and how much the holiday spending is. It would be a double-digit growth compared with last year because of the length of the holidays longer, and also with some of the government subsidies for consumption. But overall, we really need to keep an eye on over the whole 3 months or 6 months period, how the retail sales performance over the longer period so that we will be able to know, whether the household are willing to spend more. Because last year we did see, double-digit growth in consumption during long holiday, including the national holiday and also, the Chinese New Year holiday. But the retail sales remains, pretty lackluster with only less than 4%, nominal growth. So at the moment that simply based on the holiday consumption, we cannot have a firm conclusion of how good the economic recovery will be.
Okay, we will certainly be keeping an eye on those numbers. That was Raymond Yoon, Greater China Chief Economist for ANZ Bank. Thank you for your time. A shakeup in the AI industry. Now, China's AI assistant DeepSeek now at the top of Apple's download charts, stirring doubts over America's lead as well as prompting a rethink of the billions of dollars poured into artificial intelligence race. The app topped the free downloads chart in the US and is now one of the most downloaded productivity apps in the Play Store. DeepSeek is widely recognized for rivaling OpenAI's ChatGPT and Meta's Llama while operating at a fraction of their cost. Now, this is because it uses less advanced chips, following US export curbs on NVIDIA AI chips. Now, China's breakthrough in the AI field has also challenged assumptions that the more advanced the AI model, the more computing power and energy it needs. This belief has helped drive the stock of NVIDIA and its suppliers to all-time highs. Chinese tech firms riding the optimism of DeepSeek's progress. Shares in companies in Asia linked to DeepSeek surging today, while tech-related stocks such as NVIDIA, Net Advantes sank in the red. In pre-market trading, NVIDIA falling close to 9%. Other chip makers also losing ground. AMD is currently down by 4.3%. Micron is more than 6% in the red. It's also dragging other AI-related stocks. Microsoft is currently 6% lower and rival Meta 4.5% in the red. And that'll do it for business. Jill, back to you.
Thank you for that, Roland. Well, coming up on East Asia tonight, the wife of an alleged Chinese spy detained in the Philippines says her husband is innocent. And Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto marks his 100th day in office with strong approval ratings fueled by ambitious programs. You're with East Asia tonight. Moving closer to a diplomatic reset, India's foreign secretary in China for talks. But Beijing's top diplomat says he wants understanding, not suspicion. An unexpected slowdown in China's factory activity, despite stimulus measures aimed at achieving steady momentum in Asia's top economy. And impeached South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol's lawyers called the leader's indictment for insurrection the worst decision. He is the country's first president to be indicted while in office. South Korean authorities have released a preliminary accident report on last month's Jeju Air crash. It focuses on the role of a bird strike. Both engines were found to contain duck remains. The 6-page report also includes analysis on the localizer landing guidance structure, but does not mention why the flight's 2 black boxes stopped recording just before the pilots declared Mayday. It also doesn't provide any conclusions as to why the plane's landing gear failed to deploy. The Boeing 737-800 jet took off from Bangkok on December the 29th, heading to Muan International Airport. It made an emergency belly landing and crashed into a runway wall, killing all but 2 of the 181 passengers and crew on board. The probe into South Korea's deadliest aviation tragedy is ongoing. The International Civil Aviation Organization has encouraged investigators to publish a final report within 12 months of the disaster. Coast Guard and fisheries officials from the U.S., Philippines, Indonesia and Vietnam held 2 weeks of joint training this month on the Philippine island of Mindanao. Australia also joined as observers. The Philippine Coast Guard said the training focused on responses to maritime threats to protect the country's sovereignty at sea. Both the Philippines and Vietnam have competing claims with China in the South China Sea, and recent incidents have troubled relations. Over the weekend, Manila said it had to stop a scientific survey in the disputed waters after what it calls harassment by the Chinese Coast Guard. Philippine Coast Guard video shows a Chinese helicopter and a Chinese Coast Guard vessel close to Philippine boats. Beijing claims almost the entire South China Sea. Separately, the Philippines has launched a comic book about the South China Sea and how important the seas and islands are to Filipino livelihoods. CNA's Berna Bernal takes a look.
A call to awaken patriotism in 40 pages. This is how Philippine authorities describe a comic book that's intended to explain concepts related to the West Philippine Sea, how the country calls its maritime zone in the larger South China Sea. Filipino maritime experts helped to craft the text, which features a character called Teacher June, explaining to students of a coastal town the country's sovereign rights over the waters. Teacher June tells the students that Chinese actions in the West Philippine Sea, such as the use of water cannons against Philippine vessels, are illegal, coercive, aggressive, and deceptive. Teacher June also tells students that Chinese ships continue to harass Filipino fishermen despite the smooth talks between the former Philippine president and Chinese President Xi Jinping. One can't help but notice that Teacher June somewhat resembles President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. The comic's first round of publication was funded by donations.
Well, the wife of an alleged Chinese spy in the Philippines has denied the accusation against her husband, Deng Yuanqing. Deng was arrested over a week ago on charges that he spent 10 years traveling in and out of the Philippines under a businessman cover. Here again is CNA's Berna Bernal.
Noemi Deng faced the press 10 days after her husband was arrested and accused of espionage. She denied that Chinese national Deng Yuanqing conducted surveillance activities for China, as alleged by Philippine authorities. Deng is a software engineer. His wife said she met him online in 2013 and knew nothing of the company he works for.
Kaya nagugulat talaga ako kung bakit nasabing spy. Wala nga po yung mga kaibigan, walang koneksyon. Nakatakot pa yan sa mga pulis na dumadaan. Pag nakita mo yan sa daan, mas mapagpapadalan pa ako yung Chinese kaya sa kanya kasi Pilipino yung mukha niya.
The Philippine military has said Deng used high-precision topographical mapping to gather data from malls, power facilities, police camps, and military bases, such as those with U.S. access. Officials told CNA the equipment is not military-grade, but assembled by Deng on his own using commercially available components. The Philippine military said it appeared China may be mapping out the country.
The Chinese national may be an isolated case. But if you look at the bigger picture, last month we received the submersible glider, the drone, from Fisher Folks. It's the 5th that we have in our possession undergoing forensics. If we take 2 steps further backward, a local chief executive with a dubious character and background was uncovered. Foreign nationals were arrested with fake government IDs.
The Chinese embassy in Manila has criticized the espionage accusation against Deng as baseless. It has requested a consular visit to him. The lawyer for Deng's wife called the arrest a trial by publicity that he said sparks xenophobia. The arrest was made by the National Bureau of Investigation, which is under the Department of Justice, or DOJ.
The DOJ, which is also being weaponized to aid Congress in persecuting these people and to promote a certain narrative that is being adopted by the present government. The anti-Chinese narrative, it's being peddled every day.
But Justice Department spokesperson Miko Clavano told CNA the arrest was a matter of national security and not a political move. Official national security advisors to the president have urged Congress to amend the country's Espionage Act and pass legislation to counter foreign interference and malign influence. They argue strengthening the country's legal framework is essential in addressing evolving national security threats. Lawmakers also seek to widen the scope of information gathering covered to include electronic forms of espionage. Buena Bernal, CNA, Quezon City in Metro Manila.
China has detained a man suspected to be part of the high-profile scam center case involving Chinese actor Wang Xing. The country's public security ministry says the arrest of, quote, a major criminal suspect was a joint effort between the task force, the Chinese embassy in Thailand, and Thai law enforcement. The ministry added that police plan to increase their efforts to stamp out these centers, as well as deepen international law enforcement cooperation to rescue Chinese citizens stuck in such schemes. Wang was tricked into traveling to Thailand earlier this month, where he was told he would be working on a film, but was actually kidnapped and trafficked to Myanmar to work in a scam compound. After the actor's case drew widespread interest online in China, he was later located in Myanmar and freed by Thai police. The United Nations say hundreds of thousands of people have been duped into working for these so-called scam centers, where criminal networks are handling fraudulent telecommunications operations all across Southeast Asia. Well, outside of the East Asian region, Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto marks his 100 days in office today. His populist programs have helped him earn an approval rating of over 80%, according to one pollster. But Saiful Bahri Ismail finds out Mr. Prabowo's first few months have been less than perfect.
This restaurant in Bogor, West Java province, is one of 45 GoFood partners participating in the free nutritious meal program. Indonesia's technology company GoTo is supporting Mr. Prabowo's flagship program, which aims to feed about 83 million school children and other vulnerable groups. The program is one of Mr. Prabowo's key election campaign promises to fight malnutrition.
It's an early start for workers in this restaurant. They prepare the dishes at 3 in the morning and the food is ready to be delivered to the schools at around 8 a.m. The menu for today is rice, chicken, sauteed mushroom, banana and milk.
The free nutritious meal program is also expected to help boost the local economy. Small businesses like Eatbox have seen revenues increase by 35% since joining the program.
Kita dapat panduan yang sangat detail. Sebelum mulainya program ini, dari Dinas Kesehatan mengecek benar-benar keseluruhan apakah ini sudah tersertifikasi, dan alhamdulillah kita sudah tersertifikat dari BKI.
GoTo began trials of the free nutritious meal program across 13 cities and regencies in May last year as part of its corporate social responsibility initiative. The Prabowo administration faces budgetary constraints to sustain the program, and companies have been urged to contribute through their corporate social responsibility. GoTo's pilot program is fully app integrated, from scheduling to food orders, mitigating risks on accountability and transparency.
We develop an ad hoc system where the school administrator can order the food digitally. At the end of the day, we are a technology company. We need to leverage our capabilities as well. So the school administrator, once a week, they will register the number of students. Then the culinary merchant partner, they will receive the order. The moment the food is ready, we will allocate the driver partner to pick up the food.
The free nutritious meal program was launched on 6 January amid much publicity. Mr. Prabowo had delivered on his election campaign promise well within his 100 days in office. But cases of food poisoning marred the second week of the free meals rollout.
Ini adalah kesalahan murni teknis, tidak ada kesengajaan, dan alhamdulillah sudah teratasi. Itu hanya berlangsung sebentar saja dan segera mengganti menu yang kurang baik
Sehingga Pak Presiden apresiasi untuk hal itu dan beliau menilai ini hal yang bisa saja terjadi kapan saja.
Indonesia's national agenda, such as the free meal program, has played a part in how the country shaped its foreign policy. The country recently became a full member of BRICS, realizing Mr. Prabowo's ambition to make Indonesia an influential player on the global stage.
A lot of investors are really watching the president's stance in building the relationship with the different countries. If we can have the opportunity to work with as many countries as possible, where a lot of countries in the world now are more inward looking, that is actually going to be very impactful for us.
Mr. Prabowo has also consistently promoted a good neighbor policy, upholding Indonesia's commitment to regional cooperation and stability. But experts said that despite Indonesia's enthusiasm to be a global player, it should not lose focus on its immediate neighborhood.
A lot of the speeches by Prabowo, he always talks about good neighbor policy, but the explicit mention of ASEAN has been quite lacking. Within ASEAN, the usual protocol is for newly elected leaders to visit each other. Instead of going to Malaysia or going to Singapore, Indonesian president went to China twice as the first country.
Mr. Prabowo has begun executing other quick-win programs in the areas of health and housing. He hinted that Indonesians can expect other big surprises.
Ini baru 3 bulan, tolong tunggu sabar sedikit. Mungkin bulan ke-5 ke-6 saudara akan merasakan bahwa kita mau bukan jalan as usual. There is no business as usual. Kita sekarang lari, kita akan cepat, kita akan bergerak dengan secepat-cepatnya.
The honeymoon period for Mr. Prabowo and his cabinet is over, and a recent survey showed that more than 80% of Indonesians are satisfied with them. Indonesians have got a taste of Mr. Prabowo's early policies, and they will be hungry for more to see what else is in store in the weeks and the months ahead. Satfubar Ismail, CNA, Bogor, Indonesia.
On top of his domestic efforts, Mr. Prabowo is also focusing on strengthening the country's foreign relations. He has just wrapped up his first official state visit to Malaysia since taking office. Mr. Prabowo arrived in Kuala Lumpur this morning. He was accorded a full state welcome at the Istana Negara. At the invitation of Malaysia's King Sultan Ibrahim, the Indonesian president later met with Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim, where they reaffirmed long-standing bilateral ties and emphasized the need to forge closer relations among ASEAN members. Coming up on East Asia tonight, China sees a record number of domestic passenger trips during its Spring Festival travel rush. Hello again. The world's largest human migration is underway in China as millions rush home to mark Chinese New Year. A record 9 billion trips are expected between mid-January and February. Now, have a look. This is a 7% increase from 2024, when the number of trips reached 8.4 billion over the 40-day period. Now, last year, China reported 2.3 billion trips across the country during the 8-day Spring Festival holiday between the 10th and 17th of February. 94% of those journeys, or nearly 2.2 billion trips, took place along highways. Now, self-driving was the most common mode of transport, and that's a reflection of booming car ownership in China and improving road infrastructure. Now, China's railway system handled about 99.5 million trips. The country's high-speed rail network has grown exponentially, and many Chinese now see high-speed trains as the most comfortable way to move. Now, flights contributed almost 18 million trips across the country. It used to be the luxury option, but air travel today is becoming increasingly affordable for the growing Chinese middle class. Separately, water routes accounted for more than 9.4 million trips. CNA's Tan Yu Guan tells us more about the largest annual human migration on the planet.
Hongqiao train station is Shanghai's busiest transport hub. But during the Spring Festival travel rush or Chunyun period, the station gets even busier, with passenger volumes doubling at the peak of the rush.
车站面临的最大的挑战主要是客流高，列车开行的密度也高。那么我们整个上海自主站为期40天的春运，预计要发送旅客将达到超1600万人次，那么日均呢要超40万人次，那么同比呢要增加超13%。那么客流的最高峰呢，预计在1月26日出现，日均发送旅客将超70万人次，或再创一个历史的新高。春运40天我们上海直属站呢预计增开列车221对。
Ahead of Chunyun, Shanghai Railway authorities also refurbished their facilities, including those catering to children and nursing mothers. The Spring Festival is China's most important festival and also its busiest travel period. Aside from the mass exodus of people from the cities traveling back to their hometowns, there's also mass movement of holiday makers hoping to make good use of the 8-day public holiday. Which is why Chunyun is seen as a powerful driver of the economy. All those journeys are expected to boost consumption, from transport tickets to gifts, from food to entertainment. Against the lackluster economic backdrop, the spending boom this year compared to previous years will be seen as a barometer for the health of the economy, an indicator of consumer confidence. This especially as more Chinese consumers shift from buying things to looking for experiences and leisure, thereby spurring travel spending. The evolution of the travel rush itself also provides a peek into bigger trends in China. For example, up to a decade ago, rail used to make up most of the journeys. In fact, authorities did not even take into account cell-driven road trips until 2023. 2 years on, authorities now expect 7.2 billion road trips to be made during the 40-day travel rush. That's nearly 80% of the 9.2 billion trips projected between regions. This in part reflects the dramatic rise in car ownership in China. In 2024, China sold a record 31.5 million vehicles, a 4.5% increase year-on-year, amid the government rolling out a subsidy to encourage trade-in of old vehicles. What's more, the scale of Chunyun reflects another big trend: China's urbanization drive. The massive movement of people back to the rural hometowns for the holidays is a result of the large-scale migration of people to metropolitan areas like Shanghai for work, studies, or business opportunities.
我大概1年没回家了，然后家里肯定是父母还有家人妹妹，1年没回家，在外面很期待，就是很温暖。忙了1年了，终于可以回家了。
1年半载没回去跟家的人能过去，肯定是很开心的了。因为过春节是我们中国的传统节日嘛。
期待着跟他们一起吃年夜饭，一起聊天，或者一块玩一些什么游戏啊，打麻将之类的。
So, the world's largest annual human migration isn't just about journeys. It's the story of a giant nation in transition and the enduring pull of home and family. Tan Yu-guan, CNA, Shanghai.
Move over peanuts. Pistachio is the latest trendy nut in Hong Kong. The city's bakeries are using more of it to make sweet treats for Chinese New Year. This is one of the busiest times for this 46-year-old Chinese pastries shop. But instead of using peanuts or red beans for fillings, 3 generations of sweet makers are busy preparing festive treats using pistachios. Its Cantonese name translates literally to happy nut because the split shell looks like a smile.
即係帶俾啲顧客啊多啲口味咯，做啲生意會帶旺咗咯。即係以前一種傳統嘅啫，啲老人家食花生嘅啫，而家啲 新嘅一代啊，啲小朋友咁矜貴咧，就係好揀飲擇食嘅，所以開心果就係頂呱呱嘅。
And the treat is proving to be a hit. There's often a long queue outside the shop as customers stock up on festive snacks for family gatherings and gift exchanges during Chinese New Year.
幾香開心果味咯，唔係太甜，因為香港人一般咧都唔中意話好甜嘅開心果嘅，即係都濃開心果味，同埋因為佢啱啱新鮮炸起咧都好脆口，食落都好香口，好新鮮。
Over to Japan, Mongolian-born sumo wrestler Ho Shoryu is set to be officially promoted to the top rank of yokozuna. This after he clinched his second title in the New Year tournament, which ended Sunday. The 25-year-old finished the last day of the 15-day event in a nail-biting three-way playoff, beating fellow wrestlers Oho and Kinbozan to secure the trophy. His promotion also means that the sumo world manages to avoid not having an active top-ranking champion. The previous yokozuna, Terunofuji, abruptly retired mid-tournament earlier this month. Hoshoryu is expected to now follow in the footsteps of his uncle, former yokozuna Asha Shoryu, whom he used to watch from the sidelines as a child. Asha Shoryu retired in 2010 after winning 25 tournaments. And with that, we end East Asia Tonight. Don't forget, though, that your headlines anytime at cna.asia. You can also check us out on Facebook and YouTube. Bye-bye.